Today, we launch a vital initiative right here in The Hague. We must protect digital human rights and fight tirelessly against censorship for all.
All right, let's jump straight into this explainer on the April 2026 launch of Stichting Hyperboloid and its operational arm, Transparency First. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating new initiative, one whose core mission is to protect fundamental human freedoms in our rapidly expanding digital age. We're going to dig directly into their strategic blueprints and foundational documents to understand exactly how they plan to reform global digital governance. To really wrap our heads around the gravity of today's digital landscape, we actually need to start with this chillingly accurate warning from almost 2 decades ago. This is from Igor Nemek, the president of the Czech Office for Personal Data Protection, written way back in his 2007 annual report. He warned about a pendulum shift, a societal move toward collective security and digital comfort, but entirely at the expense of individual privacy. And honestly, the most striking part, he noted this was happening with the uninformed consent of the general public.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll cover 1. The global privacy shift, 2. The rise of digital censorship, 3. The launch of Stichting Hyperboloid, 4. The Transparency First initiative, 5. The roadmap for institutional reform, and finally 6. Protecting the digital citizen.
Starting right off with Section 1, the global privacy shift, from national to supranational. We are beginning by examining a pretty fundamental legal challenge: how our hyper-connected world has simply outgrown traditional national boundaries.
Looking at the early days of European data protection, officials like Nemes astutely noted that invasive interventions into citizen privacy, which, are often pushed through under the guise of national security, ultimately end up breaching the safety of us all. He recognized early on that data doesn't just politely stop at physical borders.
And this is a core vulnerability that Stichting Hyperboloid has identified. Think about it like this. National protections are bounded by state borders, right? They have established democratic oversight and clear legal avenues if a citizen needs to appeal a decision. But in stark contrast, supranational systems totally transcend those borders and lack any centralized democratic control. We're talking about massive, opaque, cross-border databases like the Schengen Information System, or SIS, and the Visa Information System, VIS. As information systems become global, the legal protections afforded to citizens simply haven't kept pace.
That glaring gap brings us right to Section 2, the rise of digital censorship and unchecked databases.
The research driving this initiative hones in on specific structural weak points in massive data sharing networks. We're talking about systems like Interpol, the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, and passenger name records, known as PNR. According to their system mapping, these huge global databases are becoming increasingly vulnerable to abuse. Our sources lay out exactly how these mechanisms, which were originally designed for highly legitimate global security and financial monitoring, are actually being weaponized. The research points out that autocratic regimes manipulate Interpol notices and FATF financial monitoring to restrict online speech, enforce censorship, and target political dissidents and minorities entirely without due process. They're using these supranational tools to impose narratives of collective responsibility. It's essentially turning global policing infrastructure into unchecked international surveillance tools against their political opponents.
To tackle these international vulnerabilities head-on, let's move to Section 3, the launch of Stichting Hyperboloid, an independent watchdog. Officially transitioning in April 2026, Hyperboloid firmly established itself as a non-profit organization. They adopted an identity that perfectly blends technological rigor with highly professional diplomacy. Operating right out of the legal and diplomatic heart of Europe in the Netherlands, they've taken a human-centric but strictly analytical approach to drive cross-sector collaboration on digital rights.
Now, the really crucial point here is the specific legal framework they chose. They incorporated as a Dutch stichting, which is basically a foundation with absolutely no members or shareholders. On top of that, they secured AMBI status. That is a specific Dutch designation for a public benefit organization, and it requires that at least 90% of all their activities directly serve the public good. This structure isn't an accident, it's entirely deliberate. It guarantees their independence and ensures their purpose-driven governance literally cannot be compromised by private financial interests or shareholders.
To hold on to that powerful tax-exempt ANBI status, the organization is bound to extreme operational transparency. They are mandated to publish a beleidsplan, or policy plan, openly online. There is strictly no profit distribution among the founders or the board, and board remuneration is severely limited. Even if the foundation were to close up shop today, all assets must be transferred to another ANBI organization with similar goals. This strict compliance framework builds immense credibility, which, let's be honest, is absolutely vital when your core mission is to challenge and audit opaque global institutions.
And that solid legal foundation brings us directly to Section 4, the Transparency First Initiative and Reforming Global Policing.
Transparency First operates as a global coalition advocating for concrete, actionable, legal safeguards within international law enforcement. So what exactly are they demanding? Their mandate is super specific. They're lobbying to introduce independent or elected members into oversight bodies, like the Commission for the Control of Interpol's files. They want to establish mandatory free legal assistance for individuals caught up in cross-border policing disputes. Furthermore, they are calling for strengthened judicial supervision over systems like Interpol and FATF, and the imposition of substantial penalties for regimes that are documented misusing these databases to hunt dissidents. The whole shebang is about ensuring the presumption of innocence.
Let's look at the numbers, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Despite being a relatively new formal entity, their impact metrics are incredibly robust. They've already reviewed over 120 complex, documented cases across 34 different jurisdictions just to build their legal analysis. They've shared 68 research-based policy briefs directly with parliaments and international bodies, and they've built an engaged supporter base of over 45,000 individuals using multilingual resources. They aren't just talking about reform, they are actively building the legal dossiers to force it. Pulling off a mission of this magnitude takes a highly structured plan. That is Section 5, the roadmap for institutional reform.
They use a highly efficient methodology they call the content funnel. It's pretty fascinating. It starts at the top with rigorous, deep-dive academic research into specific supranational vulnerabilities. This hard data is then systematically pushed into the second phase, formal parliamentary hearings, where they present their evidence directly to EU and US lawmakers. Finally, to maintain public pressure, those exact same findings are distilled into accessible weekly long reads, journalistic investigations, and eventually, books. This ensures that a single piece of intensive research generates political lobbying, academic credibility, and public awareness all at the exact same time.
Let's follow the money. Looking at their initial 12-month €87,000 operating budget, it reveals some very strict priorities. A massive chunk of that, €45,000, is heavily prioritized to fund Interpol and FATF reform specifically. Another $16,000 is allocated to a legal block focused on GDPR class actions to hold corporations accountable for data leaks, while the rest supports anti-propaganda publications and analyzing VPN risks. They plan to fund this entirely through major democratic endowments and digital rights grants.
Their 2026 timeline is aggressive to say the least. Q1 hits the ground running with foundational legal incorporation and immediately launching their flagship Interpol research. By Q2, they're already entering the EU Transparency Register and organizing their first European parliamentary hearings. Q3 shifts into aggressive legal action with GDPR lawsuits and publishing their academic findings on censorship. Finally, Q4 caps off the year with a comprehensive financial audit to maintain their nonprofit status, alongside the release of a highly practical mini-book titled 100 Methods of Bypassing Censorship.
And finally, let's zoom back out from the budgets and timelines for Section 6, protecting the digital citizen.
The absolute foundational goal of Stichting Hyperboloid and Transparency First is to safeguard what they call the digital citizen. Their core philosophy is that as society evolves technologically, with the massive expansion of biometric identification, artificial intelligence, and automated decision-making, our fundamental human freedoms just cannot be left behind. Technology has to be forced to respect privacy, autonomy, and free expression by design.
So how do they secure the future of our civil liberties? By softening rigid historical positions and fostering pragmatic, real-world collaboration across sectors. They're building a truly actionable framework. They're bridging that dangerous gap between technical reality and legislative protection. They challenge digital authoritarianism strictly with evidence-based research. They foster direct dialogue between tech experts and legal scholars. And they use highly encrypted channels to protect the whistleblowers and journalists who bring them this critical data. Ultimately, their goal is to ensure that digital infrastructure actually serves humanity, rather than just facilitating unchecked state overreach.
I'm going to leave you with this crucial thought to chew on today. In a truly borderless digital world, where data moves instantaneously from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, how secure are your human rights if the massive databases tracking you answer to no single democracy?